My dear friends, let me welcome you all wholeheartedly for our 171st meeting of the FOSWL Annanagar chapter Chennai, presided by our President Dr. Sharma VS Raveendra. He has given me the opportunity to conduct today's meeting. With the result, I am now conducting the proceedings. So first of all, let us all start with our prayer, Treasurer Narayanan Garu, to start with.
Good evening. Heaven of freedom, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee in ever widening thought and action into the heaven of freedom. My Father, let my country awake.
We have this FOSWL meeting every month online on Zoom platform. I already told you that this is 171st meeting without a break. We are able to conduct it by the grace of the Almighty. Every month we are holding talks on interesting topics. Today happens to be another interesting topic from our beloved Raveendra Garu, who is, we are in the same group called Adhyayana Bharati Seva Parivar. All of us are in fact Seva Parivar only. This Adhyayana Bharati is a subset of that Seva Parivar. Today that we have Raveendra here, he's an intimate friend of me, and he has chosen the topic Intuition and Counter-Intuition. This you can say as Laukika and Alaukika. This is what his talk is, and I am very thankful for him for obliging to talk on this topic when I asked him a few months ago. He is now here with us, and our respected Anand Kumar ji has got some nice words to present about the speaker, and I request Anand Kumar Garu to speak. Before that, I have an announcement to make. Nagendra Prasad Garu is the sponsor for today's meeting. I wholeheartedly thank Nagendra Prasad Garu for coming out and helping us with the sponsorship of this program. Likewise, I also appeal to all those members here who are assembled here to take up one of the meetings and be a sponsor. And with these few words, welcoming words, I am requesting Anand Kumar ji to present a brief introduction about our revered speaker.
Dear FOSWLians, today's speaker, Dr. Raveendra, was put on spiritual path by his father at an early age and later by teachers into Vedanta and Upanishads. From 2018, he is in a group of Vedanta students and teachers called Advait Adhyayan Bharati. He is interested in applying science and technology to his learnings of Vedanta for better understanding. He works for TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, in its insurance industry services. He was selected at campus hiring in 1997. He completed his MS by research and PhD from Aerospace Engineering Department at IIT Madras in an interdisciplinary topic after graduation in mechanical engineering.
Namaste to everyone. And before I start, I'm grateful to both Dr. R.V.S.N. Sarmaji and Dr. V. Sarmaji. They have been kind to give me this opportunity. So today I'm presenting one topic, which is, in my opinion, continuing to be from last year. Yeah. So thank you, everyone, once again for coming together. Last year, about 11 months ago, we were talking about a similar topic. that time it was In Search of Truth, trying to, how scientist approaches truth and how philosopher approaches truth, and what is the difference in understanding of truth between the two. And so whatever I have shared at the time, I am treating this as a continuity, in the sense that, in science, as science progresses, when some of the counterintuitive ideas are presented in any research continuity, then people take time to understand, right? And Vedanta is full of such counterintuitive ideas, and that is why people find it difficult to reconcile. And so we will see both of them together. That is the idea. And here, because the worldly matters, or when we approach anything, even in science, we follow intuition, we follow reasoning, but sometimes things don't lend themselves to intuition, and some of them could be counterintuitive. Right, so that is how the world, Laukika or Alaukika, the worldly matters, and what people in day-to-day world tell us, and what the Upanishad tells us, and how do we reconcile it. Sometimes it is very difficult because they seem to be quite opposite. Right, so before I talk about the topic, I will start with prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this prayer is in a way to give us strength to learn, also avoid any conflict so that we learn together. That is the purpose here. So I start sharing my ideas. So every year, when I am given opportunity by Dr. Sharmaji, what I have been doing is, until that point in time, the teaching in the classes and the learning from the science, I try to put them together, because this reconciliation is very important. And as long as the discussions are about the world and examination of the world, science applies. The moment we start negating the world, and then the philosophy begins, right? So up to that point, correlating science and this works together. And when we start dropping together, that's when science doesn't help us. So going to the progress of science, because of my background being from physical sciences and biological sciences, so about 1905, the Einstein had actually published his special theory of relativity. And then in 1915, he synthesized whatever objections, questions came until that point in time, and published it as general theory of relativity, because the solution that he gave in 1915 turned out to be more comprehensive. Subsequently, the 1905 one became a special theory of relativity as a special case of the general equations that were presented. And then there was a lot of debate. It was unbelievable because of what it says, and people took time to understand, and many people actually had rubbed it off, saying it is not correct, and they tried to disprove him. What happened was, in a matter of 4 years, a group of scientists, because what Einstein proposed is a theory, mathematically, but you need an experimental proof. Until then, you cannot say that it is correct. So there are people who made attempts from 1915, 1905 onwards, try to come up with an experimental proof, because energy and mass can mutate with each other. That's what he said. Energy equals mc square, c being velocity of light, and which implies here the mass and energy mutate. And that is interesting because until then, people examined energy, which is electromagnetic energy or any mechanical form of energy, and gravitational energy. But people examined mass as a rigid body or a flexible body, and there are mathematical equations and experiments And now when these two are put together, it is difficult to reconcile, and it's counterintuitive to say mass becomes energy. Right? So it took time and nobody believed. In fact, light, the ray of light having mass, and therefore it is likely to bend when it passes through gravitational field, was itself a counterintuitive. So the among different people who tried to prove this in various locations due to weather conditions and so on, or the setup of the experiment, they could not succeed. Finally, in North Africa, a team of British scientists had actually captured it correctly when there is solar eclipse, and also found that the light ray is bending due to the gravity. And that was actually a revelation. And then onwards, people started slowly accepting, because it's counterintuitive. It took time for people to even absorb and deal with it. It took another several years. But then it has another philosophical implication, because until then, people were thinking that perhaps exists something which is constant in the universe, and then you measure everything relative to that. And so you have this XYZ axis as a frame of reference somewhere, and with respect to that, you can measure everything. But then what he found was there is nothing in the universe that is static. Everything is moving. That means all your measurements and whatever you do are relative to one or the other. And that means there is nothing called absolute. Right? So that itself, so there are several implications of theory of relativity, both philosophically or science-wise. But I am trying to pick up only 2 points that are relevant, which I could think of. One more thing is this relativity and absolute. If you see, normally when we have a glass of water and the cup is not full, we have this attitude that it is empty or it is full. Right? So when you have this relativity, see, it is normally the way we live is even if I have 10 crores of my net asset, the moment I come to know that somebody, my neighbor, my colleague, has 20, 30 crores of net asset, then I start comparing, which is relative, and thinking, okay, I don't have enough. And the fundamental reason for unhappiness and misery is beginning of this relative life rather than living an absolute life. And it is the relative life which actually inhibits us in realizing the truth. Like in a glass of water, people, when you have this half empty and half full, the attitude of a philosopher is to see only what is there. Philosopher doesn't see what is not there. But somebody who has greed or fear would like to see that empty, which is not there. Meaning, by this comparison, somebody has X and I don't have that X, I have only X by 2. Then your fear or greed starts, then your life becomes miserable. And there are philosophical implications of this. The summary I wanted to bring out here is theory of relativity in the progress of science produced several counterintuitive ideas, not one, and it took quite some time. But then the proof, experimental proof, came in 4 or 5 years' time. Then that led to people starting to accept it. Now, the implication here that mass and energy can mutate. I like to recall, because we are still in the point of examining the universe. Prashnopanishad in one of the mantras says, Rayincha, so I'm just trying to, let me pull a pointer. Yeah, it is here in there are 3 Hindi lines, Devanagari script. I'm actually on the second line. Rayincha, Pranancha. There are 2 words. One is Rai. If you know Telugu, it is like Rai, mass. And Pranam is energy. And so from that infinite came Midhunam Utpadayate. The 2 came, the pairs have come. That is mass and energy. Before that, there was no mass and energy. Now the mass and energy came. So this is what some people say Bhu Shakti and Sri Shakti. Right? And now this mass and energy have been explained in different forms. Now, while this Upanishad, Prasna Upanishad says Raim and Pranam, I have taken phrases as they are, and please pardon me for grammar. Then in Taittiriya Upanishad, it says Vayu or Agnihi. Vayu is mass and Agni is energy, and they mutate. Then Prithivya Oshadaya, as you proceed in the description, from the earth came the plants, right? So the soil, which is kind of mass, how does life sprout from the Prithvi or the earth, and that is surprising. And then you have Annam and Pranam. So the plants you actually make from the vegetables, you cook food and then eat, and then that gets transformed into energy. And actually, Bruhadaranyaka, in the last 6th chapter, there is a Brahmanam which says Annam is Pranam and Pranam is Annam, which implies mass and energy are equal. In the sense they mutate. One becomes the other. Now, this is explained, the mass energy mutation is explained in multiple places with so much clarity. This is normally people who learn science don't even expect that somebody would have dealt with it in multiple places in such detail. Right, and then so this is one point that I have covered. Then what happens? So this is all about the observable universe, right? So when we say mass and energy, you are still observing the world, and you are dealing with the observable world. Then what happened about 10 years later, actually in 29, when S. Chandrasekhar was traveling from Chennai to Cambridge, on the ship, he had worked out his equations. He found what is called Chandrasekhar limit, which implies when the star is about to finish its lifetime, either it can explode like supernova, or if the gravitational force takes over, it can contract and become what they were calling at the time white dwarf or a black hole subsequently. But he did not publish it immediately. He waited until his PhD got over for 3 years. And after he finished his PhD, he happened to present this in a conference. And the people who did actually Eddington, who actually proved theory of relativity through experiments in 1919, he disputed. He said, no, something like that cannot happen. Einstein could not accept it at that point in time. And then science and scientific research progressed. Many people started studying this. It took another 50 years for people, the Fowler, who actually experimentally said, proved that yes, something like that exists and there is observed in the universe, and then these two guys together were given Nobel Prize. The point I'm trying to make is the visible universe, when you say mass energy mutate, people could accept it and prove it in 5 years. But then for scientific community to digest this counterintuition that there is a dark world, there is a black hole, and there exists matter inside the black hole, and that has energy, and it has extreme gravitational energy that the light even cannot escape from its event horizon, then it is startling and it's counterintuitive. Because people only knew the visible universe. They did not know the invisible universe. And then it took 50 years, people kind of accepted it. Then what happened? This lady, Andrea Guess, she is a faculty in UCLA, University of California at Los Angeles. What she did was, she and her team, they tried to work on the fact that at the center of the galaxy, our galaxy, there is a supermassive black hole, in the sense that its density is 1,000,000 times higher than what a sun can hold, and the volume is millions of times less. That means its gravitational energy, and that is what is actually trying to control the solar systems that are there in the galaxy. And our solar system actually goes in a orbit around the center of the galaxy, and it is that powerful supermassive black hole which is actually controlling the galaxy. And that is a revelation, and they have taken 25 years to prove as a team using new methods of optics and so on. The reason why I'm saying is when you say there is a supermassive black hole, and that is what is actually having control over what is visible solar systems as part of the galaxy, it's counterintuitive because you cannot study what is inside, and you have no way to study what is inside, right? You can only study what comes out of it or what reaches the boundary of it. So this is what is actually captured in this. So for this mantra from Kathopanishad, I am taking only the first phrase of the first line, Mahatah Param. For this, there is an interpretation of Maya and Jagat. The way I am interpreting is the visible universe, because in some other, like Mundaka Upanishad, you get the explanation that from the avyaktam, the vyaktam, that is unexpressed, from there came the expressed universe, or the invisible, from the invisible came the visible universe. So from that standpoint, the invisible universe, which is avyaktam, is more powerful than the mahata, which is visible universe. And this is encoded because if you put everything together, there is another mantra before this, which is about the individual. And from by the time you reach this mantra in the following, this is actually about the universal being. Now, on a universal scale, it is the invisible which is controlling the visible, and this is counterintuitive. And the fact that these people have captured it is, at least for me, ever since I could put this parallel together about 5-6 years ago, it is mind-boggling. And one more thing I like to say is, see, we are used to cyclones, right? People living in this side of India, eastern side, we are used to cyclones. So what we can do, actually, it is the wind and the wind velocity and the vortex that controls the movement of the water. All that we can do is have a stormwater drain or empty the lake so that the water gets into the lakes. Do many other things or relocate people. All the effort that we put is only with the visible water. There is nothing that we can do with the wind that is actually bringing this water. And it is the wind which is invisible, right? And so which is Vayu, which is part of the invisible along with the space and Vayu when we say that. And then right now, if some of you are watching, if your friends or relatives are there in California and Los Angeles, the wildfires have been going on for last 2 weeks. On a magnitude, particularly this is impacting industrial and residential areas, so people are worried. The damages are quite a few. Earlier, the wildfire was mostly inside the forest. Now, the most difficult part, last 2-3 weeks in controlling this is the wind. Wind at 100 miles per hour is actually the one which is most difficult, and nobody has control on the wind, which is avyaktam, which is invisible. People have control only on the visible, which is fire. So you are trying to put off with water or some other gas or some other mechanism, but you have no control. It is actually the wind that is driving. It is the wind which took the chips of the fire and spreading across regions. So now they have half a dozen fires to put off in parallel. And then the same with when you have the vortex thing, what we in our world call superconvective storm, and that speed at which the vortex moves doesn't give you time to react, and all gets over in a couple of hours, right? And again, it is the wind or the Vayu, which is invisible, is actually playing the important role, and we have nothing, no control, no way to deal with it. And that is how it works. And then what happened in 1930s? Another thing happened. Schrödinger came up with this quantum and wave mechanics, and set of people worked on this. It took about 5-10 year period, and the summary they refined it. Einstein, Schrödinger, and a group of people. But the important thing is when they worked out the equations, what they saw is this entanglement. And so fundamentally, there are two things in quantum. One is entanglement, other one is superposition. And this has huge philosophical implication. However, this is actually not proven. Experimentally. It is only mathematically they arrived at it, and nobody could believe that the entanglement could happen. In the sense, you have two objects or fundamental particles which are entangled and they move at the same time. There is no elapsed time. They move parallelly. And how could they be entangled? At least there should be a split second time, because if there is a communication channel at the velocity of light, it takes at least that bit of time, but they cannot move in parallel. But the equation said that they could be entangled. Now, it took another 90 years in 3 steps. About nobody had actually guts to even make an attempt to prove this, because they may not have believed or they didn't know what to do. So John Clauser, who was in Caltech, he had actually made special conditions and proved under some special conditions, yeah, it works, and he could prove it. In fact, the folklore is, he went to Richard Feynman office to say, after he submitted his thesis, that look, I have done this proof. And Richard Feynman apparently chased him down the corridor that all this is nonsense. And then Alain Aspect is actually, Alain is a French person who had actually removed some of these conditions and gave a proof which is a little more generic. And Anton is actually a Austrian professor who had actually given a full proof. So by the time these two people completed this work, actually goes for about 20-25 years in various steps. Altogether, they had proven that this entanglement is true, and it has a lot of implications. In the sense that you can use it for cryptography, which means you don't need to password and encrypt. The moment you do changes somewhere else, at the same time changes can happen. A lot of applications are there for computer science people, and it has a lot of physics implications. And this is counterintuitive, which took 90 years for people to crack this. And now coming to philosophy side, this superposition entanglement implication. In fact, Schrodinger was known to have studied Upanishads and believed, because the implications came that the universe depends on the observer. And that is what Vedanta says, right? Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. So if the universe depends on the observer, then is there an absolute universe? There is nothing like that. It's all relative to the observer. And in fact, when these guys got Nobel Prize in 2022, a bunch of people produced videos in YouTube saying the Vedanta is proven, and scientists have realized this after some time. But the point is, the practical way to look at this is, you have superposition and entanglement. So I have a superposition that I am sun, and then I have associated complications in my life. And I say I am husband, and I have associated complications. I say I have a son, and therefore I am a father, and there are associated complications. And then I say I am a PhD, or I am a professor, or a software engineer, and then I have associated complications. So most of the complications that we have in life are a combination of, for every single adhyaropa, which is superposition, you have associated entanglement, and every single one of us make ourselves miserable because of so many superpositions, which are so many adhyaropa, and you have associated, and the superposition makes it most complicated, and that is what causes the misery in life. But then up to this, it is about physics, and how in the progress of science, the counterintuitive ideas have taken a long time to absorb by the scientific community, starting from theory of relativity to the black holes or invisible world to the quantum entanglement. 3 aspects. And a theory of relativity could be absorbed or proven in 5 years. And then black hole stuff, 50 years. Now this is 90 years. So whenever, even in the progress of science, you have a counterintuitive idea which is beyond intuition. It takes a lot of effort for people to grasp and prove it or disprove it. And that's the point I'm trying to say. Now, if this is not enough, when you study the Upanishads and Vedanta, so many such counterintuitive points are put in front of you, and either just like people did not agree with quantum entanglement, same way people don't agree with philosophy and what Vedanta says, and that is where the debate is. And most of the people would try to give up or disprove or don't care about it, right? Now, I try to compare and then move towards the other piece. I have a set of, so I will cover that little later. So here, the scientist and philosopher, scientist trying to deal with mostly intuitive stuff, where you can logically explain, where philosopher trying to go beyond, meaning, so last year when I did the presentation, I was trying to take this as a basis. First 2 points, asatoma sat gamaya. From going from asat, that is untruth, to truth, scientist and philosopher are together. Tamasoma jyotir gamaya, that is going from darkness to light, that is ignorance to knowledge. Scientist and philosopher are together. But when you say mrityorma amritam gamaya, then they are not together. Because if you, scientist deals with universe, and when there is no universe, then scientist has no motivation. And philosopher doesn't give a damn to the universe because philosopher negates the universe. Philosopher is not bound by the physical reality, no emotion, and is detached. And that's where the departing point comes between. So this actual mantra, or the phrase, which is used as a prayer, brings clarity where the scientist and philosopher deviate from one another. And that is, again, that is also captured, is actually a fact. And that is another mind-boggling. We would not, from intuition, think that somewhere in the Veda mantra, somebody has actually had got clarity about it, because fundamentally, a philosopher studies universe, examines it in depth, and then negates it and says only the Satyam Gnanam Anantam Brahma, which is the infinite exists, and it is only one and it's absolute. That's how it is expounded. And philosopher has no hesitation in negating the universe, but scientist has trouble. And that is why if you compare the lives of Ramana Bhagavan or Einstein or Schrodinger, Einstein and Schrodinger, if you read their personal lives, it's not motivating at all. In fact, it's demotivating when you see their personal lives. While the scientific side of these individuals is really inspiring, but their personal lives are not motivating at all. And that's not the way you want to be. Whereas you look at Ramana Bhagavan, that's how you want to be. And he doesn't give a damn to what happens in the world, and he is happy. He has nothing. For 30 years of tapas that he did, he had nothing, not even food many times. But he is happy. And he is what you call Santa, Samahita. Those qualities you see in him. So now going to the rest of, so last 1 year, our teacher, our Guruji, Sri Ralapalli Ramasubbarao, he has been teaching us this Anubhuti Prakash, which is Vidyaranya Swami's Bhashyam on various Upanishads, and starting with Aitareya Upanishad, then 3 chapters of Chandogya, and in between the Taittiriya Upanishad 2nd chapter. And now, right now, we are being taught the Mandukya Upanishad. Now, as we follow these lessons, the book that I am trying to display, I followed as a reference book, and this book is written by the Sankaracharya of Mahamandaleshwar Mutt. And some of the points he brings to such clarity that they are mind-boggling and they are completely counterintuitive. So I thought I will, as juxtapose coming from the science angle to the counterintuitive points that are put on table and taught collection, and then I conclude. So number 1 is it's funny because if you read the first line, Eka Tattve Shrute Sarvam Asrutancha Srutam Bhavet. This is, I will give you the background. Chandogya Upanishad, 6th chapter. Swetaketu goes to Gurukulam. He completes Vidyadhyayana. He completes his studies. He becomes a scholar and he comes back home. And his father, who is also a scholar, observes the son. And he makes two observations. That the son is arrogant. Second, the son is outward oriented, not inward oriented. That is, there is no antarmukhatvam, the key word to be used. Rather, he was having bahya vritti. So he wants this son to become inward instead of being outward. And so he tries to puzzle him by asking this question. This question is, did you learn, because you think you have graduated from university kind of thing, did you learn or did you hear about that by knowing which or by hearing which everything is known? Now, for a scientist or anybody, because in science you have branches, right? You have biology, chemistry, physics, maths, and even within physics there are so many branches. Now, it's completely counterintuitive that by knowing one, that you would know everything. Then you are actually negating the science and scientific achievement of so many people, and nobody will agree to this point at all. And the fact is that these guys have thought about it and they had an answer, because the way this question is put to the son, that did you learn about it, which means people had already understood that aspect and it is part of the teaching. And it appeared like if the son has understood, Swetaketu has understood and behaved accordingly, he would not see what he is saying. Right? So this is one place, and you will find the same question in another place. This is actually taken from the Mundaka Upanishad, the 6th chapter in this book. Ekasmin vidite sarvam. The first line I am reading. Ekasmin vidite sarvam vijnatamiti vaidiki. In the Veda, the famous teaching that by knowing one, that you come to know everything. Can you please teach me? There is interesting contrast between the context in which this is taught. When it came to Mundaka, Saunaka, the student, approaches Angira, and with all humility, he comes and requests the teacher, can you please teach? There is this teaching. And in the prior case, when it is the case of Swetaketu, the teacher actually provokes the student so that the student pays attention to this. And here, the student is so wonderful that he on his own realizes and approaches the teacher, can you please teach me? And so the teaching gives you both contexts in which the meeting point is there. And so I'm trying to put a set of facts. I'm not trying to cover everything, right? So here it is actually saying the Jagat is Mithya. In the part of, as part of this teaching between Aruni Maharshi, Uddalaka Aruni Maharshi and Swetaketu, this aspect is also there. Jagatas Chakshasthe, Jagat, which is the universe, which is, you say Chakshusha, Syetyam. It is, what it implies is, Chakshu you interpret as an instrument. And this Jagat is visible, which is by studying through instrumentation, is Mithyatvam, and it is Mithya. And Vaktum Aditaha, all this is said somewhere, because I'm skipping. Now, the important point here is, the Jagat is Mithya, and for everybody, because we experience it so intensely, this is counterintuitive, and rarely somebody accepts it. Right? So, as part of the explanation, Maheshanandagiri Swamiji says, uses science to explain this. I have taken the sentence as it is. Now, you know, water molecule, one water molecule has two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom, which is H2O. In reality, what you see is water, meaning what you see, the eyes and the sparsha, right? The touch and feel gives the feeling of water, but it doesn't give the feeling of the fact that in reality it is two gases called hydrogen and oxygen. This argument is used that when the tattva, the first word is tattva, when the essence, when the content is actually hydrogen and oxygen gases, but for your instrumentation, what you see is pani, water. And same way, when you, so you cannot, what you try to observe, what you try to infer through instrumentation, whether it is eye or ear or any other instrumentation, that cannot be true. Normally, the intuition is when you see something, it is true. Or when you measure something through instrumentation, you believe in it. But he negates it. He says, no, what you understand through instrumentation is not the truth. What is, that is the only truth. And this is another one which is very hard to digest. And but the reality is like that. And then moving on, as part of the story, to explain another counterintuitive aspect is see the normal, the intuitive way to look at the world is I am a being, I am a human being. I am awake, I am speaking, I am presenting to you, and then I am dreaming, and then I am in deep sleep, and again I will get up. So for us, the basis is the waking state. And then we take this as the foundation, and that's how everybody takes it. And the other two states are irrelevant, right? Because all the perception, everything is happening in waking state. For somebody in the day-to-day world, even for a scientist, the waking state is the only reference. But here, the way they see is completely opposite. They see deep sleep as the real nature of the being, and it's totally opposite. So I try to spend a few minutes here. Jivatvamatmanaha pranadharanad na swabhavataha. This is not elaborated here right now, so I will just give a plain meaning. The fact that I am a jiva, I am a being, comes because the infinite has taken the form of prana, energy or life, and therefore it appears as a jivi or a being, individual human being, but actually that is not the nature. Na swabhavata, that is not the nature. And sadrupatvam vastu swatas sputam swapiti namataha. So the swapiti name actually gives you good understanding of the fundamental nature of the being. And the first line actually elaborates it. Swam apiti iti namno asya nirukti swagamyatam. So the swapiti iti, when you break the word like that from the Vedic grammar, niruktam, you will be able to understand the real essence of it. So here the two words are explained. Swapiti, swam ardhat hudko, meaning swam implying myself, apiti ardhat prapt hota hai. When I go to deep sleep, I actually merge with my true nature. Now, how can you, this is totally counterintuitive. You are saying that deep sleep is your own natural form, and you are merging when you are in deep sleep. And your waking state and dream state are actually not real. And in the elaboration, Swamiji says, Jagrat swapna mein to atma ke saath milavat bahut hai. So when you are awake and when you are dreaming, there are too many disturbances, too much pollution of the pure being. And whereas in deep sleep, sushupti mein koi milavat nahi hai. There is actually no pollution in the deep sleep. And therefore, you have to think about it. विचार की महत्व का है. So you have to think deeply about that deep sleep state. That is, you are merging with your true nature by dropping, which is not the truth. And this is mind-boggling because everyday life we are living, thinking, waking state is the fact. But the truth is our true nature is in the deep sleep, and we are going and merging by dropping. So what does it mean? The deep sleep is the actual one. You have ajnana, and because you are not aware, you don't come back and say, I came from here. There is a lot of discussion around it. I am taking only counterintuitive points to illustrate how hard it is to digest these arguments, right? And then he says, he is countering, he is not accepting waking and dream state as any matter of fact. It is all false and it is actually imagination. And this is the fact that you have used a grammar to uncover this aspect is also to memorize, to understand, to think about it. Because normally the name gives the nature of the person. You say this person is a doctor or an engineer or a father. That name gives the nature of the person. But the verb, that doctor is doing surgery, doctor is doing inspection of the patient, is only action. And action doesn't tell the nature of the doctor. Right? So when you think about doctor, the doctor knows so many things. And this is what, so name actually suggests the tattvam or the essence of the being, but not the actions, right? And it's mind-boggling. The approach taken, it's beyond intuition. And then I move on to the next one, which this is very relevant for people, for all of us who today are now like Google, like mobile. The AI in the form of ChatGPT is accessible to everybody, whether you like or not. It is there in WhatsApp, and you may tend to use it, and it is pushed into your mobiles, and you will use it, and it is part of daily life, whether you know it or not, you like it or not, it is part of it. And people are doing a lot of hype on artificial intelligence, implying the machine can learn as well or better than what a human being can learn. And so this is triggering a lot of things. People who are teachers, they are worried what students are going to learn, how they are going to misuse, how they will do the assignment by misusing ChatGPT. A lot of confusion, how fake images are being spread. In fact, for somebody who is in this, by our job is to be part of this. Somebody in our group one day put a photograph, which image, which implies there is a special flower. That special flower takes the form of Shiva, and this flower actually grows in Israel somewhere. And the moment you see the image, people who are in this field will know that it is image generated by AI. But many people who are not in this tend to believe that it is true, and AI is used to spread a lot of falsehood. And it's a big worry, and there are a lot of ethical questions. Now, that is the world we are living in right now for last 1.5 2 years. But the point here is Swetaketu, after listening to all the arguments, has a question saying, now if this is what you are saying, that I am deep sleep, my real nature is found there, then I went to school and I studied the 4 Vedas, and then what are you saying? I did not study this. What are you saying, right? And who studied this? So the teacher is answering, Chichayavan ahankaro adhite veda chatushtayam. It's a shock because for 2 reasons. For somebody who thinks I have become a scholar by learning 4 Vedas, the teacher is saying it's not you who studied this. It is Chit-Chaya. It is your ahankar, your ego which studied. It's not you who studied it. And in present day words, if I rephrase this sentence, it is AI which studied. It is not you. And imagine, no wonder in this chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, the student asks 8 times to clarify. And that forms actually almost half of the chapter. And no wonder, nowhere actually the Tattvamasi phrase, which is Mahavakyam, normally in other Upanishads, Mahavakyam is not repeated and taught so many times. It is said once or at most twice and elaborated through a set of proofs, but it is only in this chapter. The student asks 8 times as much as the teaching in the original form, because the teacher takes him through a set of arguments to come to this point, and this guy is shell-shocked because, you see, I am a professor, I am a scholar, I am a doctor, I am an engineer, and then you are telling me it is the ego which it is, and you are not that. And I have lived my life thinking I am engineer and I am doctor, I am lawyer, and you are telling me it is machine, and a machine can do that. And the machine can clear IIT exam and GMAT exam, Harvard Business School exam. And if machine can do, then what are you? You are also a machine. And in the present day world, we have come back to this point. And this is exactly the point discussed, threadbare, and answered. In 3-4 questions, he comes back to this point. Who got into deep sleep? Who got up from deep sleep? Why don't I know that? And there is a big debate between the teacher and the student, and they have actually got the idea that it is the machine which is learning. That is not yourself. That is not your true nature. And sometimes I feel hats off to these people because it is such a counterintuition. I will show you this video in a minute. It's such a counterintuition, it's very difficult to grasp. And the Swamiji's elaboration is, he says, the gold, which is the paragraph here, the gold, which is, not pure, it's something like that. So you have to remove the ingredients which make it impure, the impurities you have to remove. Then only you will know the actual gold. Like that, he says, Chichaya, the ego, is impure, and you have to remove the impurities to realize what your real self is and who you are. And the Swamiji says the word ahankar is not used, ego is not used to make it clear that it is Chitchaya, that is the pure intelligence shadow, if literally translated. And he clarifies further, this ahankar is actually a mind thing, and whereas yourself is actually the sakshi. And it is the abhasa, the superposition, which creates the impurity and the confusion. And the clarity that these people have to see this, it's amazing. It's meaning, last 1 year, it's very hard to digest this because the fact that these people have already figured out is hard to digest. The fact that the community I am part of doesn't know this is another one hard to digest. Now, I just show a small video to clarify this. Let me say a very short one. So the point here is the robo has 2 capabilities. The Kriya Shakti, ability to do the work, whether it is running or things like that. It has Vijnana Shakti or Gnana Shakti, implying this robo can learn. It has ability to learn. It has the ability to understand that if you hit the ball like this, the golf ball, it will go and actually fall into the hole. And it has the ability to see that these people are enjoying. And I cannot do that. So the robo has the Kriya Shakti and Gnana Shakti. And if you relate this to the Panchakosha in Taittiriya Upanishad, it has the 4 layers, but not the 5th layer. Robo is not the enjoyer. It is not the one which experiences the Ananda Swarupa. And the interesting thing is this ad is produced by the advertising people. And the clarity with which they can produce such an advertisement, the IQ guys, the people who are doing research on the AI side, they don't even think like this. Right? So the experiencer, who is the enjoyer? So in using other 2 technical terms, Karta Bhokta and Gnata, this robo is a Karta, is a Gnata, but not a Bhokta. And this video brings to such a clarity that Ananda Swarupa is not with the intelligence. And it's amazing because it's like a wake-up call. Now trying to conclude, Swamiji says, Gnata, the knower, knows only Maya. The knower doesn't know the real thing. That is the meaning of the first line. And other one is where the knowledge is born, jahan gnan paida ho, वह ज्ञाता होती है होता है, meaning if knowledge is born, then it becomes knower. It doesn't become knowledge by itself. And Atma, the infinite, the real being, is Nitya Gnan hai. It is ever intelligent being. And उसे ज्ञान बना रहता है, meaning by itself it is knowledge. And ज्ञान होता नहीं, it doesn't become knowledge. It is knowledge itself. It is pure awareness itself. And इसलिए वह ज्ञाता या प्रमाता नहीं बनता. So it is pure knowledge. It doesn't become pramata. And the clarity with which the knowledgeable people, a teacher can see this, just amazing. And people who have ego, they can be shell-shocked with these observations, right? And actually, I have 3 or 4 more slides to explain the Ananda Swarupa. So the way I have, because last 1 year we have at length been taught about the Ananda Mimamsa in Taittiriya Upanishad because of Vicharanya Bhashya. And the 3 chapters of Chandogya have just concluded a few weeks ago. And all these days have been trying to absorb what is being taught and reconcile what, from our science engineering point of view, what we are going through, and put these 2 together. Nothing less than a shock or mind-boggling. There is another chapter, Sanat Kumara Vidya. So Narada comes to Sanat Kumara and says, please teach. And while asking, please teach me, and this is what he says, I studied Vedas completely, Vedabhyasat Pura, Tapatre Matrena Sokita. I studied, and before studying, I was bugged by 3 problems. I became Sokita. I had Sokam for 3 reasons, which is, Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva. And Paschat, after studying, I have my Sokam, my grief has only, God became much more. That I have to, if I don't study to remember this, what I have studied, I get grief that I am not able to study. I am forgetting sometimes, and that gives me grief. And, sometimes I look like stupid, sometimes I become arrogant. And now I have 7 problems to deal with. In spite of studying, my grief has only increased but not decreased. For some of us who are aware that there are Narada Bhakti Sutras, and he is called Maharshi, and he elaborates the philosophy in Narada Bhakti Sutras. And a person of that stature makes this statement coming to a teacher. It brings to light two things. We all are educated, and have we discovered the Ananda Swarupa? Or is there a moment that we can say, no, I don't have grief. I am not bothered by what my children are doing, my wife is doing, parents have been doing, or my neighbor is doing, my colleague is doing, or my customer is doing. Right? So, have we overcome? In spite of the education, we cannot find the Ananda Swarupa, the happiness, the pure happiness. And education and this don't correlate. But what are we told from childhood? You study well, then you will get a good job, you will earn A, B, C, D, and therefore you will remain happy. But that is not the truth. And this statement actually negates it. And the statement also says, I have more grief because of studying. And one is here. So all of us who are educated in some field or the other, when we see people who are more knowledgeable, we experience this bhanga. And when we are among the people where other people may not know as much as we know on a particular topic, we may have this arrogance that, yeah, I know this. Or sometimes we are, as a teacher, we are teaching or we are talking to customer and suddenly we don't remember. And yeah, we regret having prepared for this. We don't remember, we regret it. And this is totally counterintuitive in the worldly affairs. Everybody is told you study, 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 and therefore you find happiness. And here comes the person who has studied so much and says, in spite of studying, I don't find happiness. I am still having more grief than earlier. And this is counterintuitive. How do you absorb this? And then in the 8th chapter, Prajapati Vidya, Indra and Virochana, the kings of Devaloka and Rakshasa Loka, they come to Prajapati and Prajapati teaches them the lesson and then they go back. And on the way back, the Virochana goes home and he teaches what he understands. But Indra tries to grasp what is being taught. He questions and then he finds a loophole. He feels that, no, I am not okay. And he comes back to Prajapati. And Prajapati says this line, Papakshayaya Dvatrimsyad Varshani Tapase Avasat. This is shocking because in the regular scheme of things, you do a lot of punyam, good things, and you go to Swargam, heaven. And the guy who is locked off this heaven must have done so much punyam or good things. And Prajapati is telling him, you have papam and it has to go. And for that you do 32 years of sadhana and be here. Here 32 years, if you are here sitting next to Prajapati, that is 32 years of Prajapati's time scale. And my goodness, how do you digest this? Because what world thinks, because see, in worldly affairs, everybody says, do good things, you will go to heaven and so many things, right? But here, Prajapati says, the guy who did maximum punya has become Lord of the heaven. He is being told like this. And how do you put this together? Right? Because this punyam, all this is taught in the early chapters of Veda. You do that yagam, this yagam, yajnam, and you go to, Swargam or heaven. And now, after coming some distance, you are put a counterintuitive point in front of you. How do you digest this? And, so I move on for want of time. So the answer is, because we are skipping and taking only the counterintuitive points, this is taken from Taittiriya Upanishad, Ananda Mimamsa. This is actually one Anuvakam 4 from 2nd chapter. And normally what do we do? in the regular world, we say you work hard and then you will find happiness. You work hard, you earn some money, and you get what you want, and therefore you become happy. And the Upanishad says, as long as you do this, what you get is only unhappiness. And the Upanishad says, the red item which is repeated so many times is somebody who follows what Shruti says and who is not bitten by desire. That person will find happiness. And there is a scale and explanation given to eologize the focus on not having desire. This is totally counterintuitive. You think, suppose you like mango juice. Okay, you have mango juice and therefore it gives you at least happiness for a few minutes. But here, the teaching is the guy who is following Shruti and who is not having desire is actually the real happy person. And how do you absorb this? And how do you even explain this counterintuitive, two opposing things? It's amazing. And I'm just keeping this. Actually, Swamiji says even the uneducated will get angry when somebody else at you, abuses you. You don't need to be educated to become angry when somebody abuses you, even the uneducated. Then what is the use of education? Does it give you happiness? And so on. And to conclude, Swamiji gives an analogy that the glasses help us to see very clearly. The glasses, spectacles. And the clothes cover what we should not see. And they do a good job of that. And like that, he compares Shastra Drushti, that is, in the earlier thing, Srotriyasya, same as Shastra Drushti, the person, the one who sees from what is taught in the Shastram, is the one who actually experiences the truth. And the person who is worldly, which should not be seen, this is compared with, so Shastra Drushti gives you the lenses and Loka Drushti actually covers what the real thing that you should be seeing because you are involved in worldly affairs. And he says, Mahavakya, like Tattvamasi Aham Brahmasmi, Satyam Gnanamantam Brahma. Only through this, the lens of Mahavakyas, you can experience that akhanda, uninterrupted happiness, Ananda Swarupa, which is Atma Swarupa. And now we have seen even in science, to conclude, even in science, counterintuition takes time. And here, a bunch of counterintuitive points which cannot be reconciled easily are put in front of us. Then how do we understand this? So the Mundaka Upanishad, this is said at many places. I have just taken for convenience from here. Like this, the Upanishads and the Veda have so many statements or points which will bring so many doubts. Samsayanam bahutvatah. So many doubts will come to us. And the only way to know is by approaching a teacher, a guru who is, like in the earlier slide, Srotriyasya Akamahatasya. Such a teacher, and without such a teacher, there is no way we can understand this. And I will skip this. I will read the prayer and conclude. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidushavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Once again, thank you.
Wonderful exposition of the problems we face when we look at the world as well as the philosophy. Intuition says that this will not be true, but there are several counterintuitive statements that occur in science as well as when we read the Upanishads. Sometimes it is very difficult to make both ends meet in that particular context. And your attempt to bring in the synthesis of science into the understanding of the true nature of us as envisioned by the great seers is really mind blowing and very nice. And anyone who tries to see philosophy as an abstract science should not do that. They should try to interpret in a way that how does it help me in making my life better and happy and peaceful. That is the way we have to approach the philosophy. And you have been doing it for quite a while in several presentations. I have noticed that. And here comes yet another beautiful presentation, very well synthesized, orchestrated with what we learned in science over a century and odd, and what we have been taught over time immemorial in the Upanishads. And all of us should really appreciate your wonderful talk. And
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being with us.